it's Susan here and welcome to In the Craft Room. In this episode, I'm going to narrate as we've had a bit of a glitch with our SD card and the audio has been compromised.
Can you hear me now?
In this episode, which is part 2 of the Benjaminbunny character square, I'm also going to do something a bit different. Last time we traced, cut out and ironed on the applique pieces. In this episode, I'm going to draw and paint in the details with fabric paints and markers instead of embroider. I feel that the fabric paints will add more of a depth and an interest to it than what the embroidery could ever do. To draw and paint in Benjaminbunny's details, I'm going to be using this image, an illustration of Benjaminbunny by Beatrixpotter, as my reference. I'm also going to be using the magazine guide, as I'm going to outline Benjaminbunny with a white stitch outline after he is dried. I've really enjoyed making this, and as you'll see later, he turned out great. So as you can see here, my first step that I'm going to be doing is to draw in all of Benjaminbunny's details with pencil. I'm just lightly penciling them in. I'm going to start with his hat, his pom-pom, his face, and just get the rough markings in. I'm also going to be working on his blanket, I think it's his blankie, and try and get the folds and all the shapes in it so it looks like it's a blanket that's scrunched in his paws. So all of the guide markings and his details have been penciled in, and we're ready to bring out the fabric paints. For this applique, I'm going to be using Tulip Slick Dimensional fabric paints. They are a non-toxic, non-cracking, non-peeling, permanent, and a washable fabric paint. And what I like about these is that the painted surface can be stitched over and sewn over the top of without affecting the painted image. They are dimensional paints but seem to lose this quality somewhat when mixed together to make the tints and the shades. The dimensional qualities seem to hold when used in their pure colour forms. So here I am squeezing out my fabric paint palette, and I'm going to be mixing together brown for Benjaminbunny's face and paw and his jacket, and also the specific reds for his pom-pom on his hat and for his blankie. I'm also going to introduce the use of some permanent fabric markers. These fabric markers are going to be used to fill in his eye details, his whiskers, and also his nose area. I'm also going to add in the details of his pom-pom, also the folds of his blankie using the fabric markers. So this is the finished Benjaminbunny fabric painted applique. I am really happy with him. I think he looks great. He's got a lot of depth and interest and a lot more character to him as well. The fabric paint takes about 4 hours to dry, but I'm a bit impatient and I didn't want to wait 4 hours. So my next thing was to whip out what every creative space needs, a hairdryer. Funny enough, I never use a hairdryer on myself. I only bought the hairdryer for my art practices. So next is a bit of a press to heat seal the fabric and also to smooth it out ready for stitching. So the whole painting process took around 50 minutes and the drying process with the hairdryer took about 15. I'm now ready to stitch. As you can see, I'm going to be using the guide and 2 strands of white embroidery thread to stitch around the outline. I'm also, as you can see, stitching around his hat to begin with. I then grabbed a cup of tea, sat on the couch, and then spent another hour stitching away all around Benjaminbunny. I didn't follow the guide too precisely or too carefully. I went back to my drawing with thread, and I also tried to secure down bits that were starting to lift. I do find that this fabric seems to fray a lot. I did try to do the little stitches, but it was just a bit too fiddly. So here we have the completed applique component to Benjaminbunny, and all his details have been painted in, and I've stitched in his outline. I'm really pleased with what I've done, and I'm not finished yet though. Join me in the next episode whereby I'm going to cut around him and sew him onto another backing fabric, as well as sewing on my ribbon border. Thank you for joining me in the craft room. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!